Hey, Polly.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
All right, by yourself.
Good.
That's good. Well, today we have a bunch of your peers on here.
My peers.
Your
Oh.
peers. We have the directors of Rhode Island Coalitions.
Oh,
Yeah, so today we're going to be joined by Kristen Westmoreland, who's from East Bay,
Mhm.
and we'll have Kathy Sullivan from Kent County
Yeah.
and Rebecca.
Where's Rebecca from?
Rebecca's from Newport County. So yeah, I know they share information about their respected regions, and they've got some input from the other regions as well.
Nice, great. I can't wait to see how this goes.
So we'll have some great representation from all 7 regions of Rhode Island. So without further ado, joining us today on the Totally Preventable podcast, we have Kristen Westmoreland, the co-regional director of the East Bay Regional Coalition, Rebecca Elwell, the director of the Newport County Prevention Coalition, and Kathy Sullivan, the prevention director of the Kent County Prevention Coalition. How are you all doing today?
Great, thank you. Yep.
It's awesome to hear. To start things off like we normally do, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got to where you are today?
Sure, I'll start happily. I've been in prevention, working in substance use prevention for about 25 years, and currently am the director of strategic prevention partnerships, which puts me in the awesome position of being the director of Newport County Prevention Coalition. Newport County Prevention serves Newport, Portsmouth, Middletown, Little Compton, and Tiverton. And we're really fortunate to have our home base in Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
Thank you.
I will go. So Kristen Westmoreland with the East Bay region. So we serve East Providence, Barrington, Warren, and Bristol. And this will be a fun throwback because I came to prevention through Kathy Sullivan. So I was I was in public health at Brown, getting my master's, and Kathy was the local director at the Barrington Prevention Coalition. And so we collaborated on a research project for my master's thesis, and that led me to the Drug-Free Communities Grant, which I think is what you do now, Greg, right? You're the DFC. So I started working for Kathy in Barrington when everything was siloed into just individual municipal coalitions. So that was my start. And here I am still. When was that? 2000?
5 minutes ago.
2008, a while ago. Yeah.
So I guess that leaves me. I'm Kathy Sullivan. I am currently the Kent County Prevention Coalition Director, which we're going to speak about on this podcast. But I came to this role. Long story short, I did substance treatment and outreach in England for a period of time. And then when I moved back to the States, a part-time prevention job in Barrington was available. So I started out then. I was very green in prevention. So I've learned a ton over the years, happily, through the support of folks like Kristen around the importance of data, and then the Drug-Free Community Grant. And then I moved to my current role about 8 years ago, now, actually 9. So, but yeah, we've all been doing prevention for a long time together in Rhode Island, which is great.
That's awesome.
And now there are 4 other regions, correct?
Yes, 7 altogether.
Yes, altogether. And I know we'll be talking about them a little bit more, but I've got to say everyone works so well together and feeds off each other, and everyone has been around for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that offensive?
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder, Polly.
Yes, we have. I think I honestly think that's one of the most amazing parts of the work that we do, that there are 7 regions in Rhode Island, and we became regionalized in 2017. And in all of those years, it was the original directors this entire time. Like a minute ago, the the Providence regional director has now taken a job in the treatment wing of BHGDH. So that role will be replaced. But so all of these years, we've had the same original cast of characters. And, as quickly as people move jobs these days, that's just been an amazing part of the work that we do.
We know how to work together. We have really positive regard for each other. And I think it enhances the work that we do, that there's such a spirit of sharing, and, what's mine is theirs, and vice versa in terms of the strategies that we use. We're really lucky to have one another.
Definitely. I'll be the first to say it. So aging is totally preventable if you have lots of great colleagues and friends to work with. There you go.
Ooh, that.
Done. I'm done.
I love it.
Little Easter egg there.
So I'm sure every community has unique needs. Can you share one or two of the impactful programs and what inspired their creations?
Yeah, I've got a few to talk about, and that way we'll be able to sort of share some of what our colleagues do. I think it's interesting that our funding has sort of shifted through the years from a much more sort of community-based, grassroots sort of thing towards much more sort of program-based, evidence-based programming. So I thought I would highlight first something that is really more that community-based, community building piece that is sort of more our roots. We were fortunate in our region to co-host a conference with Roger Williams University this year. The focus was cannabis. It's something that came out of our needs assessment that Roger Williams was interested in learning more about. They really felt like the college campuses are sort of in this funny situation where, they're not allowed to have cannabis on campus, yet there are 21-year-olds on campus who legally fall under the Rhode Island Legalization Act to be able to use cannabis. So they're in a really unique situation. And so we thought it would be a good idea to host a conference with them. It was very successful. We brought in a lot of people from across the country. A lot of the campuses from Rhode Island were all there. And one thing that's always really, I think, rewarding for us in prevention is that if you hold an activity, it was a one-shot thing, people will take information from that and do with what they want. But it's always nice when something else happens that sort of spins off of that. And so one thing we were really excited about was we as a result of the conference, we were able to bring back an idea known as Town Gown, which was something started years and years ago, even predated me just by a little bit. And it was a way for communities and college campuses, universities to collaborate, stay in touch, come up with solutions for maybe problems that were happening, because campuses are not totally isolated. They are part of their communities. So it was a very successful collaboration for a number of years. And then it sort of fell apart as things do. Times change, but there've also often been mention of that collaboration and how important it would be to bring it back. So as a result of this conference, we were able to do that. We've had 2 meetings so far, and it's definitely looking like it's going to be a positive thing. We're just still sort of working out what the goals and expectations are, but we'll let you know as that goes on. And then I wanted to highlight some of the more programmatic things. So in the Southern Providence region, where Patty Sweet is the regional director, they do a really fun activity called Escape the Vape. So it's based on the escape rooms that you see around that have become so popular, and it educates students about vaping and the risks that come with that. So they started with the Johnston High School Media Production Group, and they created videos that lead off each of the activities. They do it at health classes, they do it at dances, and the kids love it so much that they get in line to do it all over again because it's so popular. There's prizes. And they also do collect data on it. So it is sort of starting to build as an evidence-based program because they're able to sort of see what the knowledge base is before the kids play the game, and then what happens after. So that's really fun. And then another program that they do I like because it actually came from your region in Newport County. It's called the Pick Your Nose program, NO''S. So some of the Tiverton youth group, I believe, had created that as a media campaign.
I'll be it was Little Compton.
Oh, okay,
Be in
okay.
trouble
I was
at
told there was
home,
sorry,
so I gotta
sorry,
clear that
sorry,
up
little
right
Compton.
away.
So yeah, so they had a campaign, and then this other region, Southern Providence, took that campaign and turned it into a program, and it's actually a refusal skills program that they do with 6th and 7th graders, where they have groups where they practice scenarios and practice doing refusal skills. So it's just sort of neat. I like when things sort of beget other things in this world. That's always sort of interesting to me. And then something out of the Blackstone Valley region, which is the region led by Lisa Carcefaro, is very similar to what we're doing today. They have a radio show that has been very successful, where they interview people in the in this field and related fields on various topics. So just thought that was sort of a fun thing to highlight. Any other individual programs that you
Yeah,
guys
I'm happy to chime in. I think one of the things, several things, working with unique populations has been something that some of the regions have been able to hone in on. Again, based on data, we collect a lot of data in our respective communities, but one of the tools that we use is the Rhode Island Student Survey data, risk and prevalence survey tool that we use. And we've tried to look at specific populations. And in particular, we look at the LGBTQ plus population. Actually, the survey was enhanced with more questions to identify SOGI data based on young people's responses on the survey. When there was just asked if you are male or female, about 600 youth wrote actually physically on the survey to say, this doesn't represent me. So BHDDH has responded, updated the survey. So now we have a richer data set. And we were seeing that youth who identify as member of that community have much higher rates of substance use compared to their cisgender peers, higher challenges around mental health, suicidality. So we and other coalitions in the state have been able to use that information to develop programs, deliver programs specifically for adults who are working with that population. So for instance, we use what's called the Safe Zone Project to train adults. We just trained in South County, they just trained the whole South Kingstown School District in Safe Zone training. We have more plans to do that. We've worked with Thrive, a behavioral health organization. So really trying to develop more acceptance for those young people and change the culture in which they're living in. And that, again, some of those numbers that we just talked about are totally preventable if there was a more creative environment and more accepting environment for them. So I think that's been, again, for me, a great learning opportunity. And I know Rebecca has a great program that they're doing, which maybe you want to speak about, the Waves of Affirmation through PFS.
Sure. So to piggyback on, thank you, Kathy. I hadn't thought about that today, but we too are working with the LGBTQ plus population and looking at, particularly for transgender youth and adults, the isolation that people are experiencing, which leads to a host of other issues, mental health through the isolation, et cetera. We know those things are totally preventable by putting people together in the same space. So Waves of Affirmation was the second of a series of affirmative activities that we hosted. First was Threads of Affirmation, which was an opportunity for folks in the community to come and choose clothing. We set it up like a boutique in one of our local public spaces, and people came and shopped and got free items of clothing and accessories, body affirming items. And then we followed that up about a month later with Waves of Affirmation, which was an opportunity for transgender folks and their friends to come and swim. The Boys and Girls Club of Newport County was wonderful in opening their doors for us. And it gave people an opportunity to just gather and have a good time, but in a safe and private space. So the key for us is to look at those opportunities, gaps, places where we know that there are needs that exist, but perhaps in spaces where services or opportunities do not exist. And it's sort of to fill those gaps. I was going to, for Newport County, a couple of the things that I was thinking about to share. One is our mental health first aid program, which is an educational program. It's a workshop, 6-hour workshop that educates community members on mental health and substance use issues. Really trying to help people who either work with adults that work with adults or adults that work with youth to learn to identify, understand, and respond to potential mental health challenges. We do that through a federal grant that is the mental health awareness training grant. And we've had that for 2 years and work to really address those gaps in educational opportunities for people so that we can understand better the experiences that people are having and try to find educational opportunities to provide the community to address those challenges, but also to try to limit the stigma that is experienced when we're talking about mental health. If there's a silver lining that came with the COVID pandemic, it was opening that conversation. We could no longer keep mental health out of our pretty much daily dialogue. It opened up the opportunity to speak about, particularly for our young people when they were outside of school for so long, the isolation that they were experiencing and, thinking about cell phones and electronic connections. We're more connected than ever, but also more isolated than any time in the past. And that is really having a critical impact on our communities, especially our children. The other aspect that I was going to talk about for Newport County is not necessarily a program, but it's more of a structure. We have the terrific blessing in Newport County of being the recipient of 4 separate drug-free community grants. Those are grants that we receive through the CDC, Portsmouth, the towns of Little Compton and Tiverton, Newport, and the region all receive individual drug-free community grants, which is not a program, but it's a set of strategies and a philosophy that brings the community together, all sectors of the community, in addressing youth substance use from age 12 to 17 in ways that focus on coping skills and education, and particularly bringing parents and caregivers to the table, because there's no greater impact on prevention than a loving parent or caregiver who's looking out for the best interest of their kiddo. Those are kind of like our primary grants that really address the wide, broad community. And that makes me think of a couple of things that we've done over the years, particularly our faith-based initiative sort of came out of the drug-free community grant to include the faith sector. So faith-based organizations, faith leaders, they oftentimes are the go-to people for a family who might be facing a challenge either with their child or themselves, mental health, substance use, financial issues, and a place where outside of Newport County, where this was really a primary focus, was the City of Providence. City of Providence is its own region, and our previous colleague, Obed Pop, really did a tremendous job in outreaching to those faith organizations. And Providence being so diverse, the types and the breadth of faith organizations in the city. It was really to her credit to be able to reach out and engage such diverse people.
Wow. A lot of great work being done across this region. In
Yeah.
every region.
I particularly like some of the fun stuff that was highlighted, because a lot of times we talk about prevention, everyone's like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. And I mean, some of it is, but we do a lot of really exciting, fun stuff, I think.
Yeah, I
You know,
agree.
s-
I agree. Now, we can't get to every coalition and everyone doing this work across the country, but what is one particular program that each of you offer that you think more prevention organizations or coalitions should consider adopting, and why?
Well, my favorite, and this comes out of, again, sort of a shift in, Rebecca was talking about mental health. We didn't used to be able to really focus on mental health, even though we all knew that that was a piece of sort of the big picture of prevention. We often were told, no, just work on alcohol, just work on tobacco. So along with that shift to include mental health as its own, area and social determinant of health, also came the realization that prevention's across the lifespan, right? It's not just about high school youth, where a lot of our focus used to be in the past years. So that allowed us to really look at older adults, where there are a lot of prevention needs. And so my favorite program, if I had to pick one, is called Bingo Size. And we love this program. It's what it sounds like. It's bingo and it's exercise. And the ultimate goal is to prevent falls. And we know that if an older person falls, they're more likely to break something, they're more likely to end up needing opioids. So the hope is that the prevention is the opioid use, misuse, or, not that if opioids are needed, they, are definitely, medically indicated in cases. But if we can prevent the fall, then somebody doesn't need that. And then we don't have the risk of somebody misusing, overdosing, or having it be diverted to somebody to whom it wasn't prescribed and being misused by that person. So really fun program. It's a 10-week program, which is often a heavy lift to get someone to commit twice a week for 10 weeks. But this program is so fun that it really has been easy. People show up to one class and then they come back to the second class with somebody in tow, maybe their spouse or a friend, and they'll say, oh, can this person join too? So it's really been a great program and great for the older population that often doesn't get included in sort of these conversations. So
That's good. I like that.
I'm happy to go next. I would echo the sentiment of working with older adults. I have really, really enjoyed it. We don't do Bingo Size, but we do a different program, but it's been so enriching. But one of the other programs that we do that I think is, for me, in terms of purely substance prevention education, has been really effective and impactful. And I think an interesting way to tackle it is things like Media Ready and Media Detective. So these are media literacy programs. So it's teaching young adolescents to really understand how these industries, whether it's the alcohol, tobacco, the vaping industry, and now the emerging cannabis industry, how those industries are tackling them and targeting them with media techniques, advertising techniques. So you're really trying to educate them as consumers, as customers. But I think they're so inundated with so much advertising of other products, like to help them to discern that at an early age, I think is really helpful. So I also like the concept that we're not saying, hey, these products are bad for you, that you're going to die. All of that old 1980s fear-based education is so gone from the prevention field, but it's really trying to talk to them as young adults, as critical thinkers, helping them to make good, positive decisions. I feel like more young people could benefit from that, given the digital world that they're in and all the product placement, all that the number of ads that they see every day is it's staggering. So I do like those programs for young people.
I think one of the things, thinking that Polly sort of started us off with the idea of things that are fun. One of the things that we do across the state, but Newport County does a particular job with this, is called Hidden in Plain Sight, which is a setup of a mock bedroom, a teen's bedroom. Kind of, we pack it up in a case and bunch of cases and put it out and set up the bed. It can be done in a school or, other public spaces, libraries. And the purpose is to demonstrate to parents some of the new or emerging products, some of the ways that, some of the things that may indicate substance use with youth, the encouragement for parents to be alert, but not go in and ruin your relationship with your child by tossing their room around looking for substance use products, but to really take a look at what are the new products out there, especially with vaping. We are working in this field, 7 days a week, it feels like, and I am particularly shocked when I find a new products that you would look at and not recognize them as drug use paraphernalia, to use a very old term. Things that are vape devices that look like a USB charger, or Newport County has a sweatshirt that the little grommets at the end of the drawstring, put it in your mouth and it's a vape device. Vape devices that are built into backpacks and all sorts of things. There are also products that are out there right now that are beverages. They come in a can, they look like a soda or a seltzer can that have THC in them. And like I said, we're working in this field and paying attention, and things often crop up and it's shocking to all of us. So I think about the challenges that your average parent or caregiver might have. You would see something and it would look very benign and have no idea that it has the potential for danger for a young person. And then the danger for a young person, should they find it in their own refrigerator, or things that are for adult use that are accessible to young people. And I find that hidden in plain sight can really stimulate a conversation for parents. Parents, let's face it, it's not on the top of everyone's to-do list to get more engaged or more information about substance use, but these products are all around, and you don't even have to go to a store. They can be shipped right to your house. Kids are particularly adept at being able to order things online. And so I just find that hidden in plain sight, it's very visual. It shows, ways that things could be hidden or disguised as something else, but it allows that parent-to-parent conversation. And I think it's also online. People can look at those rooms, and we try to make it very interactive. And it gives parents an opportunity to see what those products look like.
I feel like being a parent these days, not even just being a parent, just being a person, you have to be a detective. My kids are all over 21, and one of them had like this little 4-pack, like in a cardboard wrapper, and it was pink and purple and really looked delicious the other day. And I was like, oh, what's that? And they had gone to the store and gotten different sodas and seltzers and stuff. I'm like, that looks delicious. And they're like, oh, Mom, it's a beer. And I was like, what? Like, it looked like it was a grape soda. It really did. So we all have to sort of see, check what we're consuming these days.
Right.
That also reminds me about the hidden in plain sight with Brittany, the mannequin,
Mhm.
which is the alternative to the room. It's just a typical teenage styled mannequin that shows different ways that your youth could be hiding paraphernalia on them in those different sizes as well.
So I know everyone has to measure success in their programs. So I understand how you do that with numbers. How do you do it more with stories? I'm less of a number gal and love to hear the stories of who we've helped, or what light bulbs we've turned on for people.
I'll go back to the
Go ahead,
bingo.
Kristen.
I'll go back to the bingo size program, because I think there's some just sort of really nice outcomes that again, you sort of, you know, we all do these programs because they're evidence-based. There's been all this research, as Polly, as you're saying, you know, that shows numbers and says this exact outcome that we're looking for. Opioid use is prevented. But it is always gratifying when you see the other outcomes. So with this program, you know, we've seen people who start off this program and who can barely do the exercises, and the program's great because you can tailor it to people's abilities. But even these people that start off not being able to do all of the exercises, by the end, they can. And that spills over into so many different things. I mean, there's people who, you know, maybe now they're better able to go and do their grocery shopping for themselves, or they're, you know, it's a very social program because it's done in a group setting. So there's, you know, more opportunities. Maybe they'll go out and socialize, you know, in ways that they hadn't felt comfortable because their balance was off, or they, you know, weren't strong enough to get in and out of the car or whatever. But there was a cute thing that happened in the first class that we ran, and I'm sure this happens with most of the classes, something similar to this. The participants get homework cards. So each class, or every few classes, they get something to go home and practice at home, because the hope is that, you know, when the 10 weeks ends, that you're able to extend some of these things lifelong. And so this one participant had gone home with their homework card, and it was about doing heel raises. And so they had discovered that if they just do these heel raises when they're brushing their teeth, that it's a simple way to incorporate it into your daily life, right? So they get back to class the next week, and they're sharing with the facilitator things that they did with their homework. And so this person shares that this is how they did, and, you know, light bulb goes off, all the other participants. So the next class, they're talking about what they're doing at home, and everybody says, I tried that toothbrushing thing and it really worked, you know? So now we have, you know, a group of 20 people who were all in this class who, you know, are probably still out there doing their heel raises to teeth brushing. And I bet all of us will go home and do it out there, so just fun.
What I find so fascinating about that story is that I would bet like only 1 out of 100 people would think about anything even remotely like that and call that prevention. It's
Yeah.
just the
Right.
wonderful part of this field.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
great.
I was thinking of two separate things, but one of the pieces of work that we do, and I know all of our colleagues do, is we do like outreach work. So it's not a particular evidence-based program, but we go out and we talk about Hidden in Plain Sight. We talk about the work that we do. And we've built a bridge with URI, going into a couple of the health studies classes and talking to them about prevention. The students then do an infographic on a substance prevention subject. Then we sort of assess that. But we've been doing that for a number of years now. And then some of those students have asked to intern with us during the summer. So we've had a couple of summer interns. And now I'm happy to say that we have staff here that first sat in that classroom at URI and now are on our staff team. And I think we started off indicating that some of us have been doing this for a long time. So it's great to kind of replenish the bench with younger, more creative students who are much more digital native. So I learn all the time about, you know, use of Canva and all these different digital, digital school tools to use in the prevention work. So that's been a great long-term success of the work that we do. And the other thing is, Kristen and I think we're probably one of the first communities that did a drug take-back day. And I remember even just trying to explain that to the local police, that it was not a concept they really understood at all. Trying to get CVS to put a flyer up, and they wouldn't, because this was, you know, so now, you know, long-term, like, what's that, about 11 years later, people understand drug takebacks. They know that they need to remove medicine from their medicine cabinet. A lot of people know not to flush it. They know to use it. So I think prevention, I see it as a long game. Educating people, changing policies, changing behavior, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort, but through efforts like the drug take-back events, you can do that. So I feel like so much of our work across the state is about long-term prevention, and some things are totally preventable.
I love that Kathy, I'm happy to go after you because I'm going to
Yes.
piggyback once again. It's that long game, but it's also relationship building. And that is a really challenging thing to capture in numbers. I am not an evaluator. I don't have an evaluator's mind. So counting the numbers is always a challenge for me. Remembering the narratives is much easier. Finding those testimonials, you know, I've yet to find a way to do it graphically that really satisfied a funder or an evaluator, but there's got to be a way of capturing those relationships. You know, I think about it sometimes like the, you know, the ripple in a pond, the rings keep getting bigger. You've got those close into your sort of small circle people and connections, and then those ripples go out as your work influences those people closest to you, and then it influences the next ring and the next ring. And it's how, you know, how do we go about capturing who's in those rings? Who knows now, you know, something different that they would not have maybe known but for the work that we're doing in prevention. You know, sometimes I think about things that are like a real critical piece of information for someone, thinking like about a suicide prevention program or strategy. If in a 10-year time frame, one person was prevented from harming themselves because of that, that is more valuable than what anybody could count. And yet maybe that doesn't look real impressive on a spreadsheet. But that narrative, that testimonial, that, you know, personal sharing of what that person experienced means everything in the world to a prevention specialist. I feel like sometimes we try to capture numbers as if we were like producing widgets. And how much does it cost per widget? We don't know. And we may never know. But it would certainly take somebody that has a mind that thinks differently than what my mind thinks in order to be able to monetize. We are hearing a lot about return on investment. We know roughly how much money is being spent in Rhode Island on the prevention work. That could probably be captured. What can't necessarily be captured is all of the impacts that funding is having on who is getting through their adolescence, or who's getting to be a young adult and not misusing substances or having a substance impact experience, or whose mental health is better because of the efforts that we've put out there. That's a really hard thing. And it does take the stories. It's so phenomenal when someone comes back to share the stories, like what Kathy was saying with the interns. We have a couple of young adults working with us in Newport County right now who share the stories of when they heard about the different aspects of prevention. And it's so gratifying, whether they came from Newport County to start with or not. So gratifying to hear those stories, because it is having an impact, and it's also leading some young people to come into a field that is richly in need of a younger voice.
I realized how important the stories were a few weeks ago. I do Narcan training, and someone said, well, yeah, but how many people have you saved doing Narcan training? And I was like, well, all of them. I don't know, you know, so there's not a number attached to that, but it's the stories of that I don't always hear because I don't always see these people again, but it just sort of hit home that, you know, we can't always just be counting the numbers that we can grab. There's so many more people that we're helping.
Now, for me, it was receiving a letter from the sister of someone who was struggling. And the thing that I did for them, the service I provided for them, made such a large impact. Was there a moment for each of you that that there was that you actually felt the impact of the work. Maybe it was from a participant of a program or a person who pulled you over, you know, on your way to the store or something like that. Was there was there a point during your careers where you really felt the impact of your work?
I can speak from a personal experience. You know, I have a son who grew up with a mother in prevention, and I don't think he was always thrilled about that. I would say he was probably mostly not thrilled about that at times, because I was just much more aware of the dangers that were in front of him and around him. So I would say my rules and parenting were a little bit more stringent. But when he's now he's 21 now, but he has on several occasions thanked me for the parenting style that I chose because of the risks that were around him and his peers. And now he has seen some of his peers, you know, succumb to some of the challenges around addiction, and just the challenges around vaping. He has friends who cannot stop vaping. And I think because I was on him like a wet rag around those sort of issues. And again, thanks to my colleagues like Kristen and Denise, who put him to work when he was younger around vaping prevention. But I feel like when someone can tell you, wow, that worked, that was important, thank you. It's gratifying, but it's hard work, you know.
Mhm.
It's definitely hard work, and it's rolling a boulder uphill sometimes.
I think one thing that I was thinking about, we haven't really talked about, is the municipal coordinators. So, you know, below our level is every community, which is mandated in Rhode Island. Not everyone knows this, but there's a law that every community has to have a local coalition looking at substance prevention. And, you know, each of those communities is led by a coalition, what we call the municipal or local coalition coordinators. And they are so creative and just have, I'm just, every month, I'm just sort of gratified to hear the new ideas that they come up with, you know, and many of the ones in my region have been doing this for a fair amount of time as well. And it never gets stagnant. It never gets old. Every month they're like, oh, what if we try this? What if we try that? And, you know, I just think it's really satisfying to be in such a dynamic profession that has that, you know, it's not factory work. It's it's different every day. We always
Yeah.
tell people when we interview people, right? If you don't like things
Every
to be
day is
every
different.
day, then you won't fit in this job. But you know, I just find that really gratifying to work with all of them and see what they're doing, boots on the ground. So
One of my favorite scenarios, it's really very personal to me. Several years ago, I was working with a group of students in a high school, and this charming little roguish ninth grader came into my life, and he was both the biggest pain in the rear end and the most charming, lovable person. Um, Needed a lot of direction, needed a lot of attention. I think got it through the coalition. We gave him opportunities to do things that other adults in his world, teachers or school administration, would probably not have allowed, because he was not always walking the straight and narrow path, but there was something important that we had to share with him. So he got some opportunities to do some things that were like almost putting him not at a prevention pedestal, but kind of promoting him as somebody who knew about prevention, despite the fact that his choices didn't always align with that. He graduated, I moved on from that school, and lo and behold, he came into my family circle through my niece, and it was shocking to see him after, and never expecting that he would be in my personal realm outside of my work realm. And the conversations that came out of that sounded a lot like, Rebecca, did you know that I was doing X, Y, and Z? And I did. But you let me do things anyway. Yes, we did. And it was kind of that, you know, from his perspective, why did you take a chance on me? And, you know, there was a lot of joking going back and forth. You know, like, oh, you were the toughest case. We wanted to see if we could break through. But the fact of the matter was that every kid is going to experience something that they could benefit having the love and care of an adult who does not have to love and care for them. And that was what we tried to express and tried to promote with the young people that we had those connections to. Unfortunately, we can't always go back 5 years and see what kind of impact it was. I was really blessed with this young person and getting the opportunity to see how it impacted. He uses those lessons that he learned. Again, not necessarily always, you know, toeing the line when it comes to the best choices. But I wonder sometimes, but for those experiences, would it be worse? Would he have struggled more? And also the fact that he recognizes that other people valued him, people who didn't need to. We had no connection other than the fact that he kept coming to our office. And I now think about that all the time. And I, you know, as a director, we're sometimes removed now from those relationships and direct impact with young people. But that's the one that's going to keep me going for a very long time, because we just don't know. We don't know who we're impacting and influencing, who's recognizing us as somebody who is important to them, because no one else is maybe stepping up in that way.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks. Is there any program? I feel like you guys all know each other's programs, but is there any program you've heard today or heard more about today that you're like, wow, I want to collaborate on that, or I think our community might benefit from that?
Well, I would say I've already started that a little bit with Rebecca, the waves of affirmation, for instance. I mean, I've reached out, you know, I think it's always good to emulate what your peers are doing sometimes. So I'm trying to, I think it's such a great program. So we're already starting to have talks with the local YMCA to offer a similar opportunity to trans youth, their families, non-binary young people, because it's what we need, especially in this current climate.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say what I heard, I was aware of the Town Gown initiative that's really being re-stimulated in East Bay. In Newport County, we have the Salve University, and we've had sort of a long-term relationship with them that continues to build. But I think having this Town Gown statewide initiative really kind of puts a pin in the map with any of our universities and colleges. To kind of say, let's get together and look at what are the best practices out there. And the Town Gown is an opportunity to do that and to really engage the schools in working with each other. They know best what their parameters are, what maybe the limitations of a university might be. It's so exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think whenever we have these conversations, there's what do we call them, little nuggets? Kathy and I are always, you know, we're always like, I don't know, you go to these conferences and people are like, oh, I've heard that before, but we're always like, I don't know. We come back with like a few
Think about it
things that
differently.
we want to, you know, so I'm always just sort of like thinking, you know, there's already quite a lot of collaboration between all of us, but yeah, you know, and again, I don't do so much of the boots on the ground pieces, but you know, some of these programs, I'm like, yep, got to see if one of our communities will do that. Yeah, I think that they're all just there's so much creativity.
Sometimes don't you think too, it's a matter of timing? You may have
Yeah.
heard about something
Yes.
ages ago, and
Yes.
it just either the timing wasn't right or you didn't have the capacity to follow up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I can't quite remember when the old Town Gown sort of fell apart, but maybe it was talked about to reinitiate that like 5 years ago and nothing
Mhm.
came of it.
Right.
And it seems like now there's this critical mass of enthusiasm and
Mhm.
again, the
Need.
relationships that we've
Yeah.
all built with colleges. It feels like the timing is
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I was thinking about that, about the pick your nose. I remember when you all did it in your region as a media campaign, and I didn't know that Patty's region was doing it as a program now, that they've sort of morphed it into that. And so yeah, that was one that's definitely gone in the back of my brain. Oh, I have to look back and see what your campaign looked like. And you can always use programs that help youth practice refusal skills. And that doesn't even have to be done in a school setting. That could be done in libraries or in faith communities with youth groups. So yeah.
Sure.
Now, if you were each to have a megaphone for 1 minute,
Oh, no. That'd be a bad idea here. I don't know.
I was supposed to ask that question. Whoa.
Just a piece of paper rolling up.
All right. So if you each had a piece of paper and a broadcast, what prevention's impact would be, what prevention's impact is on the nation, or your program's impact is on the nation, what would you say?
Prevention work.
Yeah,
That
you stole my words. You
yeah,
did.
so isn't that funny? That was
Yeah.
my thought too.
Yeah. So there is a mantra in the prevention world. And I think I'm going to give SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, credit for it. And it is prevention works, treatment is effective,
Mhm.
and people recover. And that is, I think, on the hard days, that is really important to remember. Starting with prevention works. If I had another little something to say, it would be put the phone down. Short and sweet. I see it as a mom. I see it as a grandmother. I see it as a community member. This constant connection through a device. And it is, I don't want to be over dramatic, but it's ruining relationships. It is a barrier to that connection that people need to have as human beings. It is having a really detrimental effect on our young people. There's this sometimes inability to feel the compassion and empathy and human connection that's required to be a community member, because we live through these devices that don't necessarily really connect us. We can't necessarily know the true meaning unless there's body language and tone of voice and all of those things. And the other thing that's happening with the devices is that a lot of times people will say, oh, there's nothing out there for kids to do. Well, I don't necessarily think that that's untrue. There might not be enough, but there are an awful lot of opportunities out there. But if you have something that's engaging your brain and entertaining you, and you don't have to leave your bedroom, we can all, and I'm speaking to adults as well as young people, we can all get tired, like lazy about going out and getting that interaction. It's too easy to be distracted by that device. And we're suffering as a community, as a country, as a result of that.
Yeah. And I would say that also the normalization of instant gratification that has come from using devices, and that speaks to adults as well as youth. When you think about distracted driving and substances, that sort of goes right. That instant gratification, that sort of goes along with substances as
Right.
well. Yeah, I agree. Big problem.
I would echo both of those things. And if I were speaking to policymakers for a minute, I would just, again, remind them that their dollars, if they are limited, which they are now, it's a good financial investment into prevention. We all have worked with people, our treatment colleagues, people in recovery, but I feel we are so much better off if we use those dollars, invest in prevention early on to help delay the onset of substance use, push it out as far as possible for a young person. I think that's so important. more so now than ever.
Thank
What is one challenge your organization is facing right now? And is there something that could be done to move the needle?
Funding.
Money.
It's the answer I've given ever since I started in this work.
Yeah.
The answer is you take the taxes on the products that we are trying to prevent the risks associated with, and you use those dollars for prevention. And we do not use those dollars in Rhode Island for prevention.
And that's only become more unpredictable at the state and federal level than ever before. But that is a long-term structural issue that we've been dealing with.
And I would amplify both of those concerns a little bit by saying under the current climate that we're living in with this administration, without getting too political, but can't avoid it. The federal cuts that are happening right now, not just to our specific grants, but that is definitely happening to coalitions across the country. But also the wider implications of cuts to funding for research. You know, we are just at the tip of trying to address the opioid crisis, and we need lots and lots of data and research to be done. And cutting funding for that, for mental health supports, is just not wise, I don't think, for our young people. Yeah, so I feel, and then some of the executive orders around DEI are really deplorable for some of our young people and the impact it's having.
I think one of the challenges that we face in communities is that people are really busy. Adults are really busy, and parents and caregivers are overwhelmed, and our kids are more isolated and need more support. And I think that in order to move the needle, caring adults need to be engaged. Even if people feel like they don't have the time or they don't have the expertise or whatever, you know, I look at it like kind of give the caregivers a break. If you're a community member, maybe you don't have children, maybe you have grandchildren, maybe, you know, whatever, step up, be a mentor. We know the impacts that mentors have on young people. It's that giving your love, your consideration, your care. Sometimes your admonishments, you know, like kids need discipline too. It's not all about the fun stuff. Sometimes it's like, this is not acceptable behavior, and being real honest about that. We all have a role to play in that, whether it's your next door neighbor, your neighbor's grandchild, whoever it might be. I think that adults need to step up. Prevention, it is not just for those prevention specialists. It's not just for those in the field, just like mental health support. We need to be giving of ourselves to our community members, and taking responsibility for that.
Yeah, I mean, we will never know all of the lives that have been saved and impacted, but
Right.
they're there. We know they're there. And sometimes it's just that one point of contact, like you said, you know, it's just that one reach out to somebody who maybe, you know, we know that's true of suicide. We've heard that before, you know, it's true of people's lives and things that are hurting them, that, you know, a little human connection is important. So
So kind of to like, you know, what we're talking about as challenges, it's, you know, it's money, but then it's also all of the things that money cannot buy.
Right.
Those human connected pieces that, you know, maybe they were more prevalent when I was young, back in the early days of the 19th century. Like we had family around, there were, you know, those circles around us that kids don't always have anymore. And you know, parents are busy. It is not that they don't care. It's not that they're not parenting. Sometimes we hear, you know, the worst of the stories. Sometimes they just don't have the resources within the family to meet all of the needs. And that's where the community can step up and step in.
thank you first and foremost for your time and all of this wonderful information, letting us all know about some of the great things that are going on, not only in your region, but across the state. So I want to thank you very much. For our listeners and viewers who are catching this podcast and they want to know more on how to get involved, can you each give us a little contact information so we can get in touch?
Sure. Newport County has a website. It's strategicprevention.org. You can go on there and sort of see what we're doing, both on the mental health side of things as well as on the prevention side. My contact information specifically is my last name, Elwell, ELWELL, at riprevention.org. And if you, email is best for me. If you send me an email and want a phone number, I am happy to share that.
Yeah, I would echo that. There's also a statewide prevention with all of the region's contacts on there. So that's www.riprevention.org. So it will connect you with your respective region, no matter where you live in the state, find out a little bit about some of the programs that are taking place. And my personal email, again, I prefer email, is ksullivan, SULLIVAN, at risas.org. But happy to direct you to any of the supports that you might need or ways to get involved with local coalitions.
Yep, and I would agree that riprevention.org, or we have eastbayprevention.org as well, and all of our contacts are on there. So
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been
thank you.
super fun and informative.
Thank you both.
Great to see you all.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.